The United States military is facing some criticism for spending this past weekend responding to Fox News host Tucker Carlson over political correctness. One sergeant major took to Twitter writing, quote, "Women lead our most lethal units with character. They will dominate any future battlefield we're called to fight on. Tucker Carlson's words are divisive, don't reflect our values. We have the most professional, educated, agile, and strongest NCO corps in the world." So when did it become the U.S. military's job or position in any way to publicly voice disagreement with the opinions of a cable news host? And is this woke military leadership under President Biden going to make us vulnerable to actual threats like China down the line? Let's bring in someone who's been following the story closely, retired Army Colonel and Town Hall senior columnist Kurt Schlichter, also a couple of decades in the United States military. Kurt, good to see you.
Good to be here.
So I'm glad you're here because as just a little CIA pleb, I never actually served. I was only in war zones carrying guns, but let's not talk about that because then people always get mad at me and say, that's not service. I say, I agree. I was making lattes. You served in the United States military, actually in uniform. What do you think about when you see official U.S. mil accounts hitting a Fox News host and saying some pretty outrageous stuff?
It's stunning, Buck. It's stunning that they take 240 years of tradition, just toss it out because Tucker said things they don't like, and they wanted to go in and distract from what he really said, which is we have an essentially unserious military that's not ready for high-intensity conventional combat against the Chinese in the Western Pacific, and decided to instead defend something that Tucker Carlson never said in the first place. So there's a lot to unpack here. I think the worst part is that they spoke at all. We have 240 years of tradition, the military staying out of partisan political debates. They threw that out the window. We have regulations that say you can't engage in partisan political debates in uniform on military websites and military forums. They blew that out. I'm old enough to remember when sergeant majors enforced standards, not broke them. And of course, you also have rules against targeting American citizens for information operations, which is what this was. This is an attempt to have an effect on Tucker Carlson or the people watching him, to make people not like Tucker Carlson, not watch Tucker Carlson, not accept his credibility. That is specifically banned. So you have multiple breaches of regulations, a breach of a giant tradition, and that's even before we get to the big picture, which is they don't want people talking about how the military is unable to fight and win against China.
I want to jump in with what Joe Biden mentioned last week as a focus of the military. This is going to transition right into what we're going to talk about here. Play it.
Some of it's relatively straightforward work, where we're making good progress designing body armor that fits women properly, tailoring combat uniforms for women, creating maternity flight suits, updating requirements for their hairstyles. And some of it is going to take an intensity of purpose and mission to really change the culture and habits that cause women to leave the military.
Yeah, I mean, that's the pregnant flight suit comment. I mean, this is the commander-in-chief. This is the president of the United States focused on this.
Allegedly.
I can understand that if you're dealing with the logistics lower down the chain, maybe some of these things would come up, grooming standards, things like that. But Kurt, this does feel like it's an exaggerated focus right now from the very top down for political reasons.
Well, of course it is, and I'm not surprised. Every other institution in American society has gone woke, and the military, where the senior leadership is in Washington, D.C., it's trained that way. If you go to the Army War College, for instance, you're not going to be taught that our number one strategic threat is China. You'll be taught that the number one strategic threat is the weather, or maybe extremists in the ranks, or some other nonsense. Look, this all comes back to one important point. Tucker Carlson has won the same number of wars that our present military leadership has in the last 20 years. He, however, has lost fewer wars. And I think that's a very important point. all this nonsense that President Asterisk was babbling about is just that. It is nonsense. It is not important in the giant scheme of things. What is important is whether we can beat China. We can't right now. I think we would lose, and I think we would lose in a dramatic fashion. The United States has been kind of gliding for the last 30 years. I was in the last war we won without any kind of equivocation. That is Desert Storm. 30 years ago, I was there with my heavily armed car wash out in the desert in the aftermath of it. But since then, we've been driving on and on and on. And you saw it in the Sergeant Major's tweet. We're the best, most powerful fighting force in the world. You know, they keep telling us they're so great. Well, I'd like to see them win in Afghanistan or maybe Iraq, where we just lost another guy because they shelled us. Or maybe finally finish up in Syria, where they just dumped a whole bunch of other guys.
Hey Team Buck, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked the video, click that little thumbs up button. And if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.